Okay, so there's a big story blowing up again around the budget. A few days ago, the Treasury released the budget figures to Parliament, and it has opened a real can of worms. One of the line items that has stirred the most discussion is the State House budget. We're talking about the money set aside for State House, and this isn't just some small detail, it's a figure that has sparked a massive national conversation about priorities, accountability, and what it really means to be cutting back. Just look at that number, 17 billion Kenyan shillings. Let that sink in for a second. That is the new, frankly eye-watering budget for the presidency for this financial year. So the big question is, how did we get here? And what does a number this big really mean for the country? All right, let's unpack this. What does a 17 billion shilling bill even look like? Because this isn't just a minor tweak. This is a huge shift in government spending that has everybody talking, from the public all the way to Parliament. And this is where you really see the jump. It's massive. The financial year initially kicked off with a budget of about 8.6 billion shillings for State House. But then, partway through the year, another 8.4 billion was added, basically doubling the original amount. In fact, some reports suggest that the initial budget was completely spent within just the first 3 months. So how on earth do you justify doubling your budget mid-year? Well, State House officials have come forward with their side of the story, and their argument is pretty simple. The original amount was never going to be enough. A quote from the State House Comptroller, Katu Ole Metito, really gets to the heart of their argument. He says, "Look, we asked for 18 billion in the first place, but we were given less than half of that." So in their view, this isn't overspending, it's simply correcting a budget that was far too low to begin with. And when you dig into the details, they give a few key reasons. They point to 4 new state lodges that have been built across the country, which of course cost money to run. On top of that, there are higher operational costs. There are currently 8 state lodges, and the government plans to build 4 more. There's also the recent salary review and the added expense of hosting major national events like Madaraka Day outside Nairobi. However, critics say this is not necessary. They argue that the president already has access to helicopters, vehicles, and planes and can easily move across the country. For example, there is already a state lodge in Mombasa, and another is being built in Kwale, which is only about a 30-minute flight by helicopter. They further add that this is nothing new, since Uhuru Kenyatta also held national events in counties. In fact, he pioneered this practice. Secondly, these are not places where the president is likely to spend much time. Many critics also argue that this reflects a contradiction, the president preaching austerity while government spending increases. But of course, that is only one side of the story. Over in Parliament, there is pushback. Lawmakers are demanding serious answers and accountability. And this whole showdown comes down to a fundamental principle in any democracy: legislative oversight. Parliament's role is not just to approve whatever comes its way. It is supposed to act as a check on power, especially when it comes to how taxpayer money is spent. One of the key voices leading this pushback is former Budget Committee Chair, Ndindi Nyoro. He has publicly questioned the 17 billion shilling figure, and he has made it clear that Parliament will not rubber stamp this without proper scrutiny. Former Interior CS Fred Matiang'i has also weighed in. He has questioned the size of the budget, pointing out that during former President Uhuru Kenyatta's time, the State House budget was around 4.5 billion shillings and was considered sufficient. He has gone further, suggesting that with the 2027 elections approaching, such a large allocation raises concerns about how the funds might be used, including claims that it could be used to influence political support. And this is where the whole issue becomes somewhat paradoxical, because this debate is happening at the same time the government is sending a completely different message to the public. President William Ruto's administration has consistently emphasized fiscal discipline, cutting waste, and a new era of national austerity. Kenyans are being asked to tighten their belts. So the big question is, if the whole country is being told to tighten its belt, why has the State House budget effectively doubled? It is this apparent contradiction that is fueling much of the public debate right now. But this is about more than just politics. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. This debate has real-world consequences and forces us to confront difficult choices about national priorities. To put this into perspective, consider this. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, with around 220 million people, spends the equivalent of about 3.1 billion Kenyan shillings on its presidency. Meanwhile, Kenya, with a population of about 60 million, is proposing to spend nearly 17 billion. The difference is staggering. In economics, there is a term for this: opportunity cost. Every shilling spent on one thing is a shilling that cannot be spent on something else. So the real issue is not just the 17 billion itself, but what the country is giving up to make it happen. So what is being given up? 17 billion shillings is not just a number. It could build and equip around 40 level 4 hospitals, fund annual school bursaries for hundreds of thousands of students, provide subsidized fertilizer and seeds for 1.5 million farmers, or pave over 150 kilometers of rural roads. These are the real trade-offs. And it's not just the public asking these questions. Experts are weighing in too. Economist Samuel Nyandemo from the University of Nairobi put it bluntly: with so many urgent needs in healthcare and education, the government's priorities appear, in his words, misplaced, or even upside down. And so, this leaves us with one final question. At a time when every shilling counts, this debate is about more than just a budget. It's about finding the line between properly funding leadership and spending in a way that fuels public distrust. So what is the right balance? That is the 17 billion shilling question. I'm Rachel OU, and this is Early Edition. If you found this helpful, like, share, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.